In the fall of 1936, I went up about 100 miles from New York City to a small liberal arts college called Bard, and it was a marvelous college. And the juniors, seniors, and freshmen and sophomores all roomed together in one big dormitory there, very nice dormitory. And one of the people on the same floor was John Steinway III, who had this marvelous Capehart machine, which was a record player par excellence for the time. And he had all these great jazz records. And the jazz records included Louis Armstrong and Benny Goodman's big band and quartet and trio, and Mills Blue Rhythm Band, Fletcher Henderson, the Dorsey Brothers, and all these marvelous records. So I would be in his room half the time, not doing my homework, but listening to these things and picking up a pair of chopsticks that he had hanging around and playing on a lampshade. I had never played a musical instrument before except clarinet as a kid, and I had never played the drums, but I got kind of fascinated by playing along with these records. So he said, well, reading period came around, reading period being the extension of the Christmas vacation that happened at this college. So I went down at Christmas time, and there was Benny Goodman at the Mad Hatton Room of the Hotel Pennsylvania, and this marvelous, charismatic character behind the drums, Gene Krupa. Well, I used to go up behind the bandstand. You could see that you could get behind the bandstand, and I'd stand behind him and watch him. I'd go there, 3 or 4 nights a week for all January and February. And finally, I asked him for lessons. I said, Mr. Krupa, I said, I'm very interested in the drums. I'd like to study. He said, kid, I don't teach. Why don't you go to Moeller? Well, eventually I did. But I saw him all through that time. After he left Benny and he had his own band. And strangely enough, in the summer of 1940, I worked opposite him at the World's Fair that's 1939, 1940 New York World's Fair, and in the place called the Dancing Campus. And I was with a band called Mike Riley. Mike Riley and Ed Farley had this big hit at the time called Music Goes Round and Round, an old song. And so Mike Riley used to leave me playing a drum solo just before Krupa went on. Well, Krupa was at the height of his powers then. He was absolutely terrific. And so I played a little drum solo, and shortly afterwards, Krupa came back to the dressing room and said, this kid, looks like I should have stayed with Moeller a while longer. Where did you get hands like that? Holy cow. I said, I don't believe it. So through the years, I saw him play. I saw him with his own band, and I saw him many times. But in about 1953 or 54, he started a school on 54th Street with Cozy Cole and the Krupa Cole Drum School. And they used to invite me over to play for them, not for their people, but for just edification. So I'd come and play on a pad for them. 2 or 3 times it happened during that period. And finally, about 1968, he called me up from Yonkers one day and said, Jim, he says, I got emphysema. He says, but I'm feeling a little better now and I want to play again. I want you to come up and teach me. I said, come up and teach you? I said, great. He said, what do you want to learn? He says, well, I want to learn the independence from your book. And I want to find out what Moeller showed you that he never showed me, because your hands certainly work differently than mine. So all that spring, fall and spring of 68, 69, I went up on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, and he was absolutely delightful, man. He was, this idea that he was a big druggie or a wild man or something like, absolutely untrue. He was framed for the marijuana bust years ago. But and then he played very well for a little while there. He made a marvelous record at the New School of Social Research with some of his Dixieland friends. And then he got leukemia. He died in 73. But he was like the charismatic all-time drummer. You can talk about all the other drummers in the world, but he was the best loved of all of them.